Now while you're watching this video, please remember to like, subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon for notification of future videos, and share this video also. Thank you.
Stop. Show me where Peter do it. Peter didn't marry and have a wife. Just show me one place where Peter said him did run go home, feel quite us more Ferrarum. It's not there. Okay, forget Peter. Peter was a listener. Peter is what I want to say a one burner. Let's go to Solomon, who had thousands of wives and concubines, hundreds. It's not there, not even once. We talk about Solomon, and it talks about breasts, legs, tummy, your back, your foot. It talk about all of that, but there is nowhere in there that Solomon even referred to the vagina of the woman. It's not there. He said, I kiss her lips, her leg, her breast, her tummy. Listen, now, Solomon is a wise man. Then why wouldn't he just say that? A small chops. I feel God. No, we are reasonable people now. Don't you think if Solomon mentioned lips, ears, eyes, nose, breast, him go as far as breast, and begin to describe it is like two clusters of grapes. And listen up, certain places now, nicer than the grapes. Why not mention it?
Yes, guys, you saw that clip just now. This is what we will be discussing in this video. Now, you may have said to yourself, Kisma, aren't you through with this man yet? Well, no, I'm not through yet at all. Right? I'm almost finished with him though, you know. After this video, you can basically say that I'm through where refuting his arguments is concerned. But yesterday, when I thought about the previous video that I did, right, titled Are There Sexual Prohibitions Within a Marriage of One Husband and a Wife, right? And I said to myself, I still feel that while I might have showed from the scriptures that one can do whatever they please once it's between man and woman in marriage and it's done by consent, granted that there is love between it, then there is no sin. I thought to myself that you refuted his arguments. That is the guy that you saw just now. I refuted his arguments, right? His initial arguments, and primarily on Ezekiel 23. Right? Again, you can see all the videos, the subsequent videos that I've done where sex is concerned in the comment section. But then I said to myself, I cannot leave any loose ends, because what will I do with Songs of Solomon, which is oftentimes a proof text that is used by many. Some use it for certain sexual practices in the bedroom, like some persons use text and say, hey, Songs of Solomon is telling you that you can quote unquote go down, right? You can actually perform oral sex. I've seen persons actually use Songs of Solomon to say that. And as you would have seen by the clip just now, some persons use Songs of Solomon to discourage certain practices, like a case in point, oral sex and so forth. However, with me, you saw that I didn't resort to Songs of Solomon in my previous video, right? I didn't. I used other scriptures to prove my arguments, and here's why I didn't go to Songs of Solomon. This is going to be the main emphasis of this video, stating why you shouldn't use the book of Songs of Solomon to either speak for or against certain sexual practices in the bedroom. This is what we want to talk about in this video, right? Now, let me give you a little download on the book of Songs of Solomon, right? I'm going to post a link in the comment section where I googled some information on Songs of Solomon from the encyclopedia, from the Britannica Encyclopedia, right? And this is what it says. Song of Solomon, also called Canticle of Canticles or Song of Songs, an Old Testament book that belongs to the third section of the biblical canon known as the Ketuvim, or writings in the Hebrew Bible, known as the Ketuvim, or writings. In the Hebrew Bible, the Song of Solomon stands with Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, and Esther, and with them makes up the Megillat, 5 scrolls that are read on various religious festivals of the Jewish year. This book is the festal scroll for Pesach, which is Passover, which celebrates the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt. The book in its present form post-dates the Babylonian exile, 5th century BC onward, right? But the poems that it preserves date from about 10th century BC, the period of the Davidic monarchy. Now it then went on to say the book, whose author is unknown, however Solomon's name is a later addition. So initially the scholars didn't know who to attribute this book to, right? But it's later down the line they figured that it seems like it is Solomon's writing, right? So he said the book, whose author is unknown, is a collection of love poems spoken alternately by a man and a woman. There is no coherent story in the book, right? And this is an important part that I want you to know, that the book of Songs of Solomon, it is not coherent. It is actually incoherent, in that it is sometimes it is difficult to actually interpret what it is saying. That's one. And for me personally, I find it sometimes difficult to identify the authors that are speaking, right? And I'm going to give you an example even before I continue to read this. I'm going to give you an example. Now, Songs of Solomon chapter 6. Whither is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whither is thy beloved turned aside, that we may seek him with thee? So this appears to be one of the other women speaking to the Shulamite woman, asking her, where is your beloved? So then verse 2 says, my beloved is gone into his garden, to the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens, and to gather lilies. Notice it doesn't even tell you that the Shulamite woman is speaking, but you can assume that she's the one speaking here. Then it says, I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feedeth among the lilies. Then verse 4 says, thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army. Turn away thine eyes from me, for they have overcome me. Thy hair is a flock of goats that appear from Gilead. Thy teeth are as flock of sheep which go up from the washing, whereof one beareth twins, and there is not one barn among them. A piece as a piece of pomegranate are thy temples within thy locks. There are threescore queens and fourscore concubines and virgins without number. My beloved, my dove, my undefiled is but one. She is the only one. So you see, when you start reading from that to verse 9, you would have think that it's the same Shulamite woman speaking, but it appears that it had actually switched to the beloved, and it doesn't even indicate that it's the beloved is speaking. You would honestly believe that it's the Shulamite woman from verse 4 saying, thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, go right until it goes on to verse 8. You would think that it's the same Shulamite woman speaking, because verse 2 and 3, you could guess that it's the Shulamite woman speaking. So it continues, and it doesn't even indicate that there's a change in speaker. You understand? So this is one of the difficulties I have personally. I can show you some more, but I don't want this video to be too long. sometimes it can really be difficult to identify when there's a change in speaker because it doesn't tell you. And this is what the Encyclopedia Britannica of Britannica is saying, that there is no coherent story, right? It is hard, it is incoherent, hard to understand. A number of poems systematically describe the beauty and excellence of the beloved. The Song of Solomon has received various interpretations, the most common being allegorical, which is symbolical. The next is dramatic, the next is cultic, and the next is literal. Now, based on what you would have seen with what the man is saying, you know, his interpretation is of a literal approach, not allegorical or dramatic or cultic. Right? I'm going to post a link in the comment section, but I'm only going to show you three: the allegoric one, the dramatic one, and the literal one. So continuing, among Jews, the allegorical interpretation regards the book as an allegory of God's love for the Israelites, with whom he has made a sacred covenant. Among Christians, the book is interpreted as describing the covenantal love of Christ for his church. In medieval mysticism, the Song of Solomon was construed to apply to the love between Christ and the human soul. So here's the dramatic interpretation now. Dramatic interpretations of the Song of Solomon are based on much of the books being in dialogue form. According to this view, the speakers in it are enacting roles in a dramatic love story that varies in outline according to the particular interpretation. In view of the absence of drama in ancient Semitic literatures, however, such interpretations are not very probable. So he's saying that this is a very less likely interpretation, and the reason is given, right? Skipping the cultic part. The fourth interpretation, and the one that has perhaps gained the most credence among modern scholars, is simply that the Song of Solomon is a collection of secular love poems without any religious implications. According to this interpretation, the songs celebrate the joy and goodness of human love between the sexes and the sense of inner fulfillment and harmony with God's creation that arise from such love. So the Britannica, Encyclopedia of Britannica, is saying here that the fourth interpretation is the most likely used, which is the literal one, literal interpretation, by saying, according to this interpretation, the songs celebrate the joy and goodness of human love between the sexes and the sense of inner fulfillment and harmony with God's creation that arise from such love. So this is the interpretation that he stands by. Now, I used to view, when I first started studying the Bible, I viewed Song of Solomon by taking a literal approach. And when I did that, by the time I read Songs of Solomon 4 verse 6, verse 16, when it is saying, "Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden, and eat his pleasant fruits." Friends, it was very hard for me to accept, because in my mind I'm saying, how could the Bible actually be endorsing oral sex? That's how I saw it, by taking a literal approach, right? But in my mind, I just couldn't fathom that God is putting things like those in the Bible. So I left the book alone and said myself, this book doesn't seem like something that I can understand. I refused to accept it, right? And I didn't know how to interpret it. That was then. As I grew in Christ, I then began to take an allegorical approach. But then I find that if I take an allegorical approach, what am I going to do with instances when it's talking about her breasts? And how am I going to interpret those things if I take an allegorical approach? Right? How am I going to possibly interpret when it's talking about her breasts, her navel, and all these things? What would be the symbolic meaning behind of all of that? So then I left the book And then Songs of Solomon became one of the worst book for me to study. Because of that, I just, even now, I don't know what to do with it. You understand what I'm saying? But now I understand why the Encyclopedia of Britannica says that the literal approach is the one most widely used. Because if you use the allegoric one, you are going to have huge problems in trying to, because you have to be consistent, you know, if you are going to take an allegoric approach. And how will you find the symbolic meaning behind her breast? What symbolic meaning would be behind that? You see what I'm saying? And I couldn't take the literal approach because I'm about consistency, you know, which is something he lacks, right? And this is what I'm going to talk about. He took the literal approach, right? And yet still, when he talked about Songs of Solomon verse 7, when it says, thy breasts are like clusters of grapes, right? And saying Solomon went so far to mention all of those things, right? Her navel, her neck, and different parts of her body, kissing her lips and so forth, passion and romance. Why didn't he mention about the vagina? And I believe that he means him going down on her, right? But here's the problem with this. If you're going to take a literal approach on those things, what will you do with Songs of Solomon verse 4, Songs of Solomon 4 verse 16, when the woman here saying, awake, O north wind, and come thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. You have to take that literal too, you know. When she said blow on her garden so that spices flow out, is she saying that he should perform oral sex on her and let her orgasm so that her vaginal fluids can can secrete or what have you? When she then says, let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruit, what is the fruit that is spoken of there? You can't take the other text literal and don't take this one literal as well. Another one that you can look at before we go to the fruit part. Songs of Solomon 2 verse 4. Songs of Solomon chapter 2 verse hold on. Verse 3, right? As the apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. Second time it's talking about fruit, you know. Again, if you take a literal approach with Songs of Solomon, you have to take this verse 3 literal as well. What is he say? What is she saying? That she sat down under his shadow with delight, and his fruit was sweet to her taste. Is she talking his sex organ, quote unquote penis? Is she talking about performing oral sex on him? This is what you have to ask yourself now, you know. Now, the Bible talk about fruits, right? And we know in scripture, fruits can mean your overall character, acts of righteousness or unrighteousness. That is basically considered as fruit. What spews from you in your attitude and so forth. What fruit do you germinate? Right? This is oftentimes how we understand fruit based on a New Testament standpoint. And you know, a case in point, the fruit of the Spirit and so forth. But once you take a literal approach, you can't then suddenly switch and take verse 3 allegorically and then say, hey, when she's saying sat under his fruit and it was sweet to his taste, she is probably saying what comes from the beloved, right? What the fruit that came from him. Just as how Jesus said, abide in me and it shall bear much fruit. You can interpret it that way and say the fruit that she got from him, right, made her righteous. It was sweet. Just as how you know, the Bible said the word of God is sweet to the taste and so forth in the book of Psalms. You can look at it this way, you know, allegorically, right? You could interpret it that way. Same way with Songs of Solomon 4 verse 16. You can take an allegorical approach and say, hey, when she's talking about tasting your fruits, Jesus basically sampling your fruits and see if it's righteous or unrighteous fruits you're bearing. That's the allegorical approach. But if you take an allegorical approach, you have to be consistent and interpret the breast and all these things allegorically as well. You can't be inconsistent. It is either allegorical or it is literal. And if you take it literal, then we can conclude that Songs of Solomon is endorsing people to perform oral sex, if you take a literal approach. If you take an allegorical approach, then that wouldn't be the case. But yet still, the problem that I have with Songs of Solomon, you don't even find one of the New Testament authors alluding to Songs of Solomon. They allude to several parts of the Old Testament, the Psalms and the prophets and so forth, but never have it ever alluded to anything in Songs of Solomon. It's almost as if the New Testament writers never saw any relevance to that book. This is why I believe is one of the reasons why many scholars doubted the authenticity of Songs of Solomon. Because not only is the word God not even mentioned once in it, the only book that God isn't mentioned once in it. You don't know the direction, what is the focus of the entire book. The New Testament writers didn't saw it of anything of any importance. You understand what I'm saying? And with all these things is the reason why I say you should not go to Songs of Solomon to speak anything in favor of anything sexual or against anything sexual, because you're going to end up in problem. You understand what I'm saying, guys? The last thing that I'm going to say where the book of Songs of Solomon is concerned is that it is regarded as a poetry, right? Not law. In the Torah, there is no law. The Torah is, and those things are practiced, which we can argue that they perhaps were. Then God, if God had a problem with it, any form of sex between man and woman who is married, he would have stated that in the Old Testament. And where there is no law, there is no sin. So therefore, Solomon could not then come with something, right, that would either contradict the law, right, or what have you. Because in Isaiah it says, God says, to the law and to the testimony, if it speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. So when Moses had ended his speech in the giving of the law, you find that in Deuteronomy, it ended, everything that pertains to the law ended by the time of Moses' death. This is why the scripture says the law was given through Moses. So the fact that it ended, no law could then be given afterwards, because it had come to a close right from Moses. So Solomon can't come and put some bedroom laws, right, when Moses didn't give any. He cannot come afterwards and put any law. So whichever approach you want to take with Solomon, whether allegorical or literal, you cannot, right, interpret it in a way that suggests that Solomon is condemning sexual practices between male and female, because then Solomon would be speaking contrary to the law. No light would be in it. That is what God said. If it speak not according to this word, there is no light in it. Now the New Testament teaches that we are no longer under the law. That's important to know. So even if there was a law where sex between man and woman in the bedroom is concerned, granted that you interpret Solomon, Songs of Solomon to be saying that, the fact that we are no longer under the law, you must now show that that law is still applicable in the New Testament. If the Old Testament actually have a law for bedroom activities between husband and wife, and you won't find no such thing in the New Testament, that's the worst place to actually go and find and seek to find something to condemn sex, certain sexual practices between man and woman, husband and wife. It better you try stick with your Old Testament, because you won't find even once it being anything hinted at like that where the New Testament is concerned. Right? So I end this video, guys. I do hope that you are edified by it. What I will say where Songs of Solomon is concerned is that look at it as it's showing the beauty of what husband and wife relationship should be like. The romance, the love, and the passion, and so forth. And then look at it as our relationship to Christ, to God, right? The Father and to Christ. However, don't stress yourself too much where the interpretation is concerned, because that book, based on what we can see, it is not of much relevance. The very fact that it's not even mentioned in the New Testament, it is of no end time relevance whatsoever, right? The video that I did before this is sufficient enough to tell you evidence as to what is right and what is wrong as it pertains to sex. Now, this is my final video that sums up everything, where the theoretical part of where sex between husband and wife is concerned. Right now, I'm looking to do another video where it's called Sex Talk 101. This is where I will do the practical part. Right, I did the theory. Now I'm going to look at the practical part, where I will show you that it's not feasible for you to take a legalistic approach where sex between husband and wife is concerned. That is that's going to be the emphasis of the video. But I am very tired, guys, and in truth and in fact, I am hoping to either put out another video, right, either later, or if I don't get to do it later, depending on how I'm feeling, then in the morning. I cannot guarantee that the Sex Talk 101 will drop this week. However, if it isn't, you can look for it on Wednesday of next week, right? So with that being said, guys, I'm ending now. I do hope that you are edified by this video. If you are, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Bye bye now.